The Mafia boss saw something in the diner that froze his heart, something that shouldn't exist. He followed the waitress home, breaking every rule he'd ever made. What he found changed everything, and now the most dangerous man in the city would burn his entire empire to the ground to protect it. The coffee was cold again. Enzo Vitali stared at the chipped ceramic cup, watching steam rise into nothing. Midnight had come and gone at Rosie's diner, and he was the only customer left.
He preferred it that way.
Empty booths meant no witnesses, no small talk, no one stupid enough to recognize him and try something brave. "You want a fresh one, hon?" The waitress appeared beside his table, like a ghost. Young, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and tired eyes that had seen more than they should. Her name tag read Mia, in faded letters. "No," Enzo's voice came out rougher than he intended. 9 years of giving orders had stripped away any softness. "How much longer are you working?" Mia glanced at the wall clock. "Another 20 minutes.
Why?
You planning to rob the place?" She smiled, but there was caution behind it. "Smart girl." "Just curious how late you people stay open." He pulled out his wallet, dropped 2 20s on the table for a $6 coffee. "Keep it." She looked at the money, then at him. "That's too much." "Then buy yourself something that isn't coffee and exhaustion." Before she could respond, movement outside the window caught Enzo's attention. A boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, stood under the streetlight, bundled in a coat too big for his small frame. He was waving at Mia through the glass. But it wasn't a regular wave. The boy's hand moved in a specific pattern, 3 fingers up, then a circular motion, ending with a tap against his chest. Playful, deliberate,
Familiar.
Ice flooded Enzo's veins. Mia waved back with the same gesture, laughing silently. The boy grinned and pointed down the street, indicating he'd wait for her there. "That your kid?" Enzo's words came out sharper than he meant.
Mia's smile faded.
"Why do you care?" "I don't," but his hands had tightened into fists under the table. She grabbed the money and walked away without another word, disappearing into the kitchen. Enzo sat frozen, his mind racing backward through 9 years of grief. 3 fingers up, "I love you," circle motion, "always and forever," tap the chest, right here. It was the secret signal he'd invented for his son, Marco. A game between father and son. Something private. Something impossible for a random street kid to know. Marco had died in a house fire 9 years ago. Enzo had buried an empty casket because there wasn't enough left to bury. His wife Elena had died in the same fire. The investigation ruled it an accident. Faulty wiring in their summer home. Enzo had burned down half the city in revenge before accepting the truth. Sometimes bad things just happened, even to men who controlled everything. But that signal, that exact signal. Coincidence didn't exist in Enzo's world. Someone was sending him a message, or... The diner lights flickered off section by section. Mia emerged from the back, coat on, keys jingling. She didn't look at him as she headed for the door. Enzo stood, leaving the cold coffee behind. Outside, the November air bit through his expensive suit. He watched Mia walk toward the boy, who'd moved down the block near a bus stop. She ruffled the kid's hair, said something that made him laugh, and together they started walking deeper into the industrial district. Every instinct Enzo had developed over 20 years in the Mafia screamed at him to follow. He climbed into his black Mercedes, parked in the shadows 3 cars down. The engine purred to life, and he followed at a distance, headlights off. The streets were empty this time of night, just closed warehouses and chain-link fences. Mia and the boy walked fast, comfortable in the darkness. She kept one hand on his shoulder, protective. They turned down an alley, then another, navigating the urban maze like they'd done it 1,000 times. Enzo's phone buzzed. Tony, his driver. "Boss, you want me to pick you up? Getting late."
No.
"Go home." "You sure? That's not a great neighborhood." "I said go home," he ended the call. The Mercedes crept forward, silent as a predator. Enzo had followed men before, rivals, traitors, cops who asked too many questions. But this felt different. This felt like chasing a ghost. The boy laughed at something Mia said, the sound carrying in the quiet night.
Light.
Innocent. So different from the violence that filled Enzo's days. They stopped in front of a building that looked ready to collapse. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, a sign that might have once read, St. Mary's Home for Children. The orphanage had been condemned for years, scheduled for demolition that never came. Mia pulled out a key, unlocked a side door, and ushered the boy inside. Light flickered on in a first-floor window, warm, yellow, alive. Enzo parked the Mercedes a block away and killed the engine. He sat in the darkness, watching that single-lit window, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't since the night of the fire. That hand signal. That birthmark he'd glimpsed on the boy's neck when he turned under the streetlight. A crescent moon shape, just visible above his collar. Marco had the same birthmark, on his left shoulder blade. Elena used to kiss it every night before bed, calling it his lucky moon. Enzo's hands shook on the steering wheel. Impossible, he whispered to the empty car. But the Mafia had taught him one thing. Impossible just meant someone was hiding the truth. He reached for the door handle, then stopped. If he walked in there now, emotional and unprepared, he'd make mistakes. And mistakes got people killed. Instead, Enzo pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in 5 years. Marcus. It's Vitali. I need you to run a full background check. Quietly, he stared at the orphanage window. A waitress named Mia. Works at Rosie's Diner on 5th. And I need everything you can find about a condemned orphanage on Warehouse Row. He paused, watching Mia's silhouette move past the window. And Marcus?
No one else hears about this.
No 1 inch. Enzo waited in the car for 20 minutes before moving. Patience was survival in his line of work. Rush and blind, and you ended up in a body bag. The street remained empty. No cars, no witnesses. Just the orphanage and its single-lit window, like a beacon in the urban wasteland. He stepped out of the Mercedes, closing the door softly. The November wind carried the smell of rust and old garbage. His Italian leather shoes, worth more than most people's monthly rent, crunched over broken glass as he approached the building. The side door Mia had used was locked, but the back entrance hung crooked on broken hinges. Enzo slipped inside, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. The hallway smelled like mold and decades of neglect. Paint peeled from walls in long strips. Water damage stained the ceiling. This was where she brought the kid? To this death trap. Voices drifted from somewhere ahead, children's laughter, Mia's softer tones. Enzo moved toward the sound, his footsteps silent despite the debris. 20 years of enforcing and surviving had taught him how to become invisible when needed. The hallway opened into what must have once been a common room. Enzo pressed himself against the wall, staying in the shadows where darkness pooled thick. The scene before him stopped his breath. 7 children, ranging from maybe 6 to 12 years old, filled the space. The room itself was a patchwork of survival, mismatched furniture, blankets nailed over broken windows, a hot plate plugged into an extension cord that ran who knows where. Christmas lights strung across the ceiling provided most of the illumination, casting everything in a warm, makeshift glow. Mia stood at a counter that might have been a nurse's station once upon a time. She stirred something in a large pot, soup from the smell of it. Her coat was off now, replaced by a worn sweater with holes in the elbows. "Tommy, did you finish your math homework?" she called out. A skinny kid with glasses looked up from a battered textbook. "Almost. I'm stuck on number 7 inch. Let me see after dinner." Mia tasted the soup, added salt. "Lily, stop pulling Sarah's hair, or no dessert." 2 girls on the floor immediately separated, guilty as charged. The boy from the diner, the one who'd made that signal, sat at a table trying to fix a broken lamp. His tongue stuck out in concentration as he twisted wires together.
Careful, Jamie, Mia warned.
"Don't shock yourself." Jamie. The boy's name was Jamie. "I got it." The lamp flickered to life. Jamie pumped his fist in victory, and the other children cheered. From the shadows, Enzo studied the boy's face. Dark hair, olive skin, the same sharp jawline Elena's family had. But lots of Italian kids looked like that. It didn't mean anything. Mia carried the pot to the table. "Dinner, everyone. Wash your hands first." The children scrambled up, forming a chaotic line at a small sink in the corner. Jamie went last, patient despite being smaller than most of the others. "You did good work on that lamp," Mia told him, serving soup into mismatched bowls. "My dad taught me." Jamie's voice was quiet. "Before." Enzo's pulse quickened. "Before what?" "Well, he taught you well." Mia ruffled his hair again, that same protective gesture from earlier. "I don't remember his face anymore," Jamie said suddenly. "Is that bad?" The room went quieter. Even the younger children sensed the shift. Mia crouched down to Jamie's eye level. "No, baby. That's not bad.
You were so young.
But I bet he'd be proud of you. Learning to fix things, helping the other kids, being brave." "You think he's watching?" "I think if he loved you, he never really left." Mia tapped Jamie's chest, the same spot from the hand signal. "Right here." Jamie nodded, satisfied with that answer. He grabbed his bowl and sat down. The children ate with the desperate efficiency of kids who didn't know when the next meal might come. Mia didn't eat. She moved around the room instead, tightening a loose light bulb here, adjusting a blanket there, checking a little girl's forehead for fever. She wasn't their mother.
She was too young for that.
But she moved like one anyway, like someone who'd built a family from broken pieces. After dinner, Mia supervised teeth brushing and tucked the younger ones into sleeping bags arranged on the floor like a campground. The older kids claimed a corner with actual mattresses. The whole operation ran with practiced efficiency. Jamie was the last one ready for bed. He'd changed into pajamas, Superman, worn thin from washing. As he reached up to turn off the lamp he'd fixed, his shirt rode up. Enzo's world stopped. There, on the boy's left shoulder blade, clear as a brand, a crescent-shaped birthmark. Not similar. Not close. Identical. The same size, same placement, same curve. Enzo had kissed goodnight 1,000 times. The shadows suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Enzo gripped the wall to stay upright. It couldn't be. Marco had died. He'd seen the house burning. He'd identified Elena's body. The fire chief had explained how hot the flames burned, how little they'd found of. But they'd found almost nothing of Marco. Just fragments. Assumptions. A child's shoe. What if the assumptions were wrong?
"Mia."
Jamie called softly. "Can you check for monsters?" Mia smiled, walked over, and made a show of looking under his mattress and behind a broken filing cabinet. "All clear. You're safe." "Promise." "Promise." She kissed his forehead. "Sweet dreams, Jamie." The boy, his boy, curled up under a thin blanket, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Enzo backed away slowly, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. He made it to the hallway, then outside, then to his car before the shaking started. He gripped the steering wheel with both hands, breathing hard. The cold dawn, the feared boss of the Vitali family, the man who'd ordered executions without blinking, sat in his car and felt tears burn his eyes for the first time in 9 years. That birthmark. That signal. That face, now that he really looked. Marco was alive. And someone had made Enzo believe his son was dead. Enzo didn't go home. Home was a mansion in the hills with 14 rooms he never used and silence that echoed like a tomb. Instead, he drove to his office, a legitimate construction company that laundered money and provided cover for less legitimate operations. Dawn broke gray and cold as he unlocked his private office on the top floor. The city stretched below, waking up to traffic and coffee runs and normal problems. Enzo's problems were buried 9 years deep. He went straight to the safe behind his desk. The combination was Elena's birthday. Inside, underneath stacks of cash and backup passports, sat a cardboard box he hadn't opened since the funeral. His hands trembled as he lifted it out. Inside, photos of Marco, birthday parties, beach trips, the boys' first day of school, Elena pregnant, glowing, one hand on her swollen belly. Their whole life, reduced to paper memories. Enzo spread everything across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's what this was now, a crime. Someone had stolen his son and let him believe the boy was dead. He grabbed the official fire report next, pulling it from his filing cabinet. He'd read it 100 times in those first terrible months, searching for someone to blame. The investigators had concluded, electrical fire, started in the basement, spread too fast. 2 casualties.
Elena Vitale, 32. Marco Vital, 6.
But now Enzo read it differently, looking for lies instead of closure. The timeline jumped out first. The fire started at 11:47 p.m. according to the report. But the fire department didn't arrive until 12:23 a.m. 36 minutes. The summer house was only 15 minutes from the nearest station. Where was the delay? Enzo grabbed his laptop, pulling up everything he'd saved from that night. News articles, police statements, photos from the scene he'd paid crime photographers to take. The summer house had burned to the foundation. Nothing but ash and twisted metal remained. But in one photo, taken from the back of the property, Enzo spotted something he'd missed before. Tire tracks in the muddy garden, too fresh to be from the fire trucks that came from the front. Someone else had been there. He zoomed in, hands shaking. The tracks led away from a house, toward the woods that bordered the property. An escape route. His phone buzzed. Marcus, the private investigator. It's 5 a.m., boss. You said quiet. I'm working on it. I need something else. Enzo's voice was ice. Pull everything on the fire investigation from 9 years ago. The summer house on Lakewood Drive. I want the original reports, not the cleaned-up versions. Silence. Then, boss, that's sealed. Official investigation, closed case. I don't care if it's sealed with the Pope's blessing.
Get it?
This is about your... Just do it. Enzo ended the call. He opened his contacts next, scrolling to a name he'd hoped never to use again. Detective Frank Morrison.
Dirty cop.
On Enzo's payroll for 15 years. The man who'd handled the fire investigation. Morrison answered on the first ring. Vitali? Jesus, it's not even dawn. We need to talk.
Now. About what?
About why you're still breathing. Enzo's voice dropped to the tone that made men confess sins. My office. 30 minutes. Come alone. He hung up before Morrison could argue. Enzo spent the next half hour circling his office like a caged wolf, piecing together fragments. The rushed investigation. The quick ruling of accidental death. The cremation Morrison had recommended for closure. No body. No dental records confirmed. Just ashes in an urn. They'd played him. Someone had played him, and he'd been too destroyed by grief to see it. The office door opened. Morrison walked in, looking older and grayer than Enzo remembered. The detective's eyes darted around nervously, the look of a man who knew he was in trouble. Sit. Enzo didn't move from behind his desk. Morrison sat, hands clasped. Boss, if this is about the fire. 9 years ago. My family. The color drained from Morrison's face. That case is closed. Accidental death. We went over. You went over nothing. Enzo slid the fire report across the desk. 36-minute response time to a house 15 minutes away. No dental confirmation on my son's remains. Tire tracks you never investigated. Tell me why. There wasn't enough left to. Tell me why. Enzo's fist slammed the desk. A photo of Marco jumped, landing face up between them. Morrison stared at the picture, sweat beading on his forehead.
Jesus, Enzo. I'm sorry.
Sorry for what? What did you do? I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know what they were planning. Morrison's words came out in a rush. I just got a call that night. A voice I didn't recognize. Said the fire investigation needed to be quick and clean. No deep dive. No questions. They said if I cooperated, 20 grand would appear in my account. And you took it. My daughter needed surgery. I was desperate. Morrison's voice cracked. I thought it was just rich people covering up insurance fraud or something. I never thought the body they pulled from your son's bedroom. What about it? Morrison's face went gray. It was already dead when the fire started. Smoke inhalation pattern was wrong. I noticed it during the autopsy, but I was told to ignore it. To just sign off on accidental death for both victims. The room spun. Enzo gripped the desk. You're telling me someone planted a child's body in my house? Let it burn? Let me think my son was dead. I didn't know whose kid it was. I didn't even know if. Morrison stopped, realizing how damning that sounded. I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. Enzo walked around the desk slowly. Morrison shrank back.
The voice on the phone.
Who was it? I don't know. It was disguised, electronic. Guess. Someone close to you. Someone who knew your schedule, knew you'd be in the city that night, knew Elena and Marco would be alone at the summer house. Morrison looked up, terrified. Someone in your own organization, boss. It had to be. The betrayal hit like a bullet. Someone he trusted. Someone he'd broken bread with. Someone who'd looked him in the eye while his son was alive somewhere, stolen. Get out, Enzo whispered. Morrison fled. Alone again, Enzo picked up Marco's photo. The boy smiled up at him, gap-toothed and innocent. I'm going to find who did this, Enzo promised the picture. And I'm going to make them pay. Enzo didn't sleep. He spent the day making calls, moving pieces on a chessboard only he could see. By the time evening came, he'd positioned two of his most trusted men, Leo and Vincent, in unmarked cars around the orphanage. Watching.
Documenting.
Making sure no one else knew about the boy. At 11 p.m., he returned to Rosie's diner. The place was busier tonight. A trucker at the counter. 2 college kids in a booth, laptops open. And Mia, moving between tables with the same efficient exhaustion he'd seen before. She spotted him immediately. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition, maybe wariness. She grabbed a coffee pot and approached his usual booth. Back again, it wasn't a question. She poured without asking, her movements careful. You must really hate your own kitchen. Something like that. Enzo watched her face. You work every night. Most nights. Tips are better when the bars close. She set the pot down. You want food this time. Or just expensive coffee you won't drink. Smart mouth. He almost smiled.
The boy outside last night.
Your brother? Mia's expression locked down instantly. The warmth vanished, replaced by something harder. Why do you care? Just making conversation. No, you're not, she crossed her arms. You're asking questions. I've seen enough men like you to know when someone's digging. Men like me? Dangerous ones. She held his gaze without flinching. The kind who show up in expensive suits, throw money around, and ask about kids. So I'll save us both time. I don't know what you want, but you won't find it here. The protective instinct in her voice was genuine. Whatever her connection to Jamie, it wasn't sinister. It was maternal. Relax, Enzo said quietly. I'm not a threat to you or the kid. Every threat says that, but she didn't walk away. What's your deal? You a cop? Social services? Do I look like social services? You look like money and trouble. Usually the same thing. Mia glanced over her shoulder at her other tables. Look, I don't know what you think you saw, but I saw a waitress taking care of a kid who should probably be home in bed. Makes me wonder why he's waiting outside diners at midnight.
Mia jaw tightened.
Maybe his home isn't safe. Maybe some of us do what we have to do. You take care of kids? Enzo kept his tone casual, non-threatening. That your family? Your charity work? I help where no one else does. Her answer was clipped, defensive. Is that a crime? Depends on who's asking. Well, you're asking. So who are you? Someone curious. Enzo sipped his coffee. It was terrible, but he didn't complain. That building you went to last night. The condemned orphanage. You living there? Mia's face went pale, then flushed with anger. You followed me? What the hell is wrong with you? I'm concerned. You're a creep, she grabbed the coffee pot. I should call the cops. Go ahead, Enzo pulled out his phone, slid it across the table. Tell them a customer asked you questions. See how far that gets you. They stared at each other. Mia's hands trembled slightly, adrenaline, not fear. She was genuinely ready to fight if needed. Those kids in that building, Enzo said softly. They're not legal, are they? No foster placement, no official guardian. You're hiding them. I'm protecting them, Mia's voice dropped low, fierce. From a system that would separate them, put them with strangers who cash checks and don't give a damn. They're safe with me. In a condemned building with broken windows. Safer than the alternatives. You don't know what some of these kids came from.
And the boy?
Jamie? Enzo watched her reaction carefully. What's his story? Mia's protective instinct flared hotter. His story is none of your business. He's been through enough without men in suits showing up asking questions. Where'd he come from? I'm done talking to you, Mia turned to leave. I can help, the words surprised even Enzo. Money, resources, protection. We don't need your help. Mia looked back, and her eyes were fierce. Whatever you're looking for, you won't find it with those kids. They deserve to be left alone. To feel safe. So, do yourself a favor and don't come back. She walked away, her posture rigid with anger and fear. Enzo sat in the booth for another hour, watching Mia work. She avoided his section entirely, had another waitress refill his coffee. But he caught her glancing at him repeatedly, assessing the threat level. She was genuinely protecting those children. Not running a scam, not working for enemies, just trying to keep kids safe with whatever resources she could scrape together. It made what he had to do next feel even worse. When Mia's shift ended at 1 a.m., Enzo paid and left through the front door. He walked to his Mercedes, parked in plain sight this time. Let her see him leave. Let her think he was giving up. 2 blocks away, he pulled over and called Leo. She's coming out now, boss, Leo reported from his surveillance spot. Heading toward the orphanage with the kid. Follow them. Close enough to document. Far enough to stay invisible. I want to know if anyone else is watching that building. Any other cars, any suspicious activity. You think someone else knows? I think I need to be sure she's not connected to anyone. Enzo watched his mirrors. Check her background, phone records, bank accounts, known associates. If she's working with rival families or law enforcement, I need to know. And if she's clean, then she's just what she looks like. Someone trying to save kids nobody else wants. Including yours? Enzo's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Especially mine. Which means she's either an accidental saint or the best plant I've ever seen. Find out which. On it, boss. The line went dead. Enzo sat in the dark, watching the diner's lights shut off one by one. Somewhere in this city, his son was sleeping in a condemned building, believing his father was dead. Believing his real name was Jamie, not Marco. 9 years stolen. 9 years of birthday parties and school plays and bedtime stories. 9 years Enzo would never get back. But he'd have the truth. And he'd have blood. He started the engine and drove into the night, a ghost hunting ghosts. 3 days later, Marcus called with answers Enzo both needed and dreaded. They met at a warehouse Enzo owned on the industrial waterfront, empty except for shipping crates and the smell of motor oil. Marcus arrived with a laptop and a manila envelope thick with documents. You're not going to like this, Marcus said, setting everything on a rusted metal table. I haven't liked anything in 9 years. Talk. Marcus opened the laptop first, pulling up a scanned document. City archives. Records from St. Mary's Orphanage before it was condemned. I had to bribe 3 people to get access. The screen showed an intake form, faded but legible. Enzo leaned forward reading. Name, Jamie Cooper. Age, 6 years. Date of admission, November 19th, 2016. Previous guardian unknown. Notes, child found wandering near warehouse district. Nonverbal for first 2 weeks.
No identification.
No missing persons report match. November 19th, 2016. 12 days after the fire that supposedly killed his son. Cooper isn't his real name, Enzo said quietly. It's not even a good fake. Standard placeholder they use for unclaimed kids. Marcus clicked to another document. But here's where it gets interesting. Normally, unidentified children get flagged for state investigation. Police get involved, social services does a full workup, fingerprints go into the system. But that didn't happen.
No.
Someone filed paperwork saying Jamie Cooper was a foster placement from out of state, Pennsylvania. They forged transfer documents, made it look legitimate. By the time St. Mary's shut down 3 years later, Jamie was just another kid who fell through the cracks. Enzo's hands clenched into fists. Who signed the paperwork? Dead end. Signatures illegible, and the caseworker listed quit 2 weeks after Jamie's admission. Left the state. No forwarding address. Marcus pulled up another file. But I traced the original intake. Guess who was working at St. Mary's the night Jamie showed up? Tell me. A woman named Angela Rossi. Night nurse. She's the one who processed him, gave him the name Jamie Cooper, and wrote "found wandering" in the report. The name hit Enzo like a fist. Rossi. Yeah. Any relation to Dominic Rossi? My former consigliere. Enzo's voice went cold. He died 6 years ago. Heart attack. Or what they'd called a heart attack. Dominic had been found dead in his car. Autopsy ruled natural causes. He'd been overweight, high blood pressure, all the risk factors. But Dominic had also been one of 3 people who knew Enzo's family would be at the summer house that night. Angela Rossi was his sister. Marcus continued. She died 2 years ago. Also natural causes, cancer. Convenient. Enzo stared at Jamie's intake photo on the screen. The boy looked hollow-eyed, scared, smaller than 6 years old should look. Everyone who touched this case is dead or gone. Which means someone covered their tracks very carefully. Marcus pulled papers from the envelope. But they couldn't erase DNA. Enzo's heart stopped. You got it. Your men did. Leo's good at what he does. Marcus spread out lab results. They collected a toothbrush from the orphanage 3 nights ago, when the kids were asleep. Sent it to a private lab, rush job, paid triple to keep it quiet. And Marcus looked up, and his expression was grave. 999% match. The boy is your biological son. The warehouse spun. Enzo gripped the table to stay upright. He'd known, somewhere deep, he'd known, but having proof made it real. Made the betrayal real. Made 9 years of grief and rage suddenly have a target.
Marco, Enzo whispered.
His name is Marco. Boss, I'm sorry. I can't imagine. Who else knows about this? Just me, Leo, and Vincent. No one else. I swear. Enzo nodded slowly, his mind already racing through scenarios. The fire. The fake body. The forged paperwork. This wasn't random. This was organized. Someone wanted you weakened, Marcus agreed. Losing your family like that, it would have destroyed most men. Almost destroyed you. It had destroyed him. For 2 years after Elena and Marco's supposed deaths, Enzo had been a ghost running an empire. He'd made mistakes, lost territory, trusted the wrong people. His grief had been a vulnerability, and someone had exploited it. But who? Dominic was your consigliere, Marcus said carefully. He knew your security, your schedules, your properties. If he was involved, then someone above him gave the order. Enzo's voice was ice. Dominic didn't have the ambition to move against me, but he had access. He could have been the hand while someone else was the brain. Your current inner circle, who was around 9 years ago? Enzo ran through the list mentally. Most of his top lieutenants had turned over since then, dead, promoted, or retired. But one name stood out. Rocco Marchetti. He was a soldier back then, hungry for advancement. Now he's my top lieutenant. You think he moved against you? I think someone did. And whoever it was is still close enough to be dangerous. Enzo gathered the documents, his movements controlled despite the rage burning through him. If they find out Marco's alive, they'll try to finish what they started. What do you want me to do? Keep digging. I want financials from 9 years ago. Anyone who came into sudden money, anyone who made moves right after the fire. And I want surveillance on Rocco. Quietly. If he even breathes wrong, I want to know. Marcus nodded. What about the boy? And the girl, Mia? Enzo thought of Jamie's hollow eyes in that intake photo. His son, traumatized and alone, given a fake name and left to survive in a condemned building. They stay where they are. For now, Enzo headed toward the exit. But I'm going to get closer. I need to know if Mia knows anything about his past. If she's protecting him accidentally, or if someone planted her there. And if she's innocent. Then she's kept my son alive for 9 years while I thought he was dead. Enzo paused at the door. Which means I owe her everything. Or it meant she was the best long-term surveillance anyone had ever run. Either way, Enzo needed the truth. His son was alive. And someone was going to pay for every single day they'd kept that secret. Enzo showed up at the orphanage on a Saturday afternoon with a briefcase full of cash and a cover story he'd rehearsed a dozen times. The front door was locked, but he could hear children's voices from inside, laughter, shouting, the chaos of kids being kids. He knocked, 3 solid raps that echoed through the condemned building. Footsteps approached. The door cracked open, chain still attached. Mia's face appeared in the gap, and her expression shifted from cautious to alarmed the moment she recognized him. You've got to be kidding me, she started to close the door. Enzo put his hand against it. Not forcing, just stopping. I'm here to help. I told you to stay away. I'm a potential donor. I support children's causes. He kept his voice level, reasonable. I have money, and you clearly need it. 5 minutes of your time. I don't want your money. The kids might feel differently. Enzo gestured at the building behind her. This place is falling apart. I can see water damage from here. When was the last time you had the wiring checked? The heat working properly?
Mia S. Joe tightened.
He'd hit a nerve. Please, Enzo added, and the word tasted foreign in his mouth. Just let me look around. If you still want me gone after that, I'll leave. She studied him for a long moment, and Enzo could see her weighing options. Pride versus practicality. Protection versus desperation. You touch one of these kids wrong, and I'll kill you myself, she said finally, unhooking the chain. I don't care who you are. Understood. The interior was worse than he'd seen through the window. Exposed wiring ran along walls. The floorboards sagged in places. It was a miracle the city hadn't condemned it twice over. Or maybe they had, and Mia just ignored the notices. 7 children were scattered around the common room. The same ones from before. They looked up when Enzo entered, their conversations dying. Kids had good instincts about danger. Jamie sat at the table, coloring in a worn book with crayons that were mostly stubs. He glanced up, met Enzo's eyes briefly, then returned to his drawing. Everyone, this is Mia paused, realizing she didn't know his name. Mr. Vitali, Enzo supplied. I'm interested in helping repair the building. Are you a construction worker? A little girl asked Lily, he remembered. Something like that. We don't need fixing, said Tommy, the boy with glasses. Protective.
Smart.
We're fine.
Tommy, Mia warned gently.
She turned to Enzo. You can look around. The kids stay with me. Enzo nodded, setting his briefcase down. He made a show of examining the walls, the ceiling, the ancient electrical panel. But his attention kept drifting to Jamie. The boy had Marco's mannerisms, the way he bit his lower lip when concentrating, how his left hand curled slightly when he drew. Elena had always said Marco was left-handed like her father. What are you drawing? Enzo found himself asking. Jamie looked up, surprised to be addressed directly. A house. Can I see? The boy hesitated, then turned the coloring book. It was a simple drawing, a house with a red door, flowers in front, a sun overhead. The kind every kid draws. It's good, Enzo said, his throat tight. It's where I want to live someday. Jamie's voice was quiet. Somewhere with a yard. And a dog maybe. What kind of dog? A big one. One that protects people. Jamie smiled slightly. Mia says we can't have pets here because the building's not good enough. But someday. Enzo crouched down to eye level, and something passed between them. A flicker of recognition that couldn't exist but somehow did. Blood calling to blood. You seem like a brave kid, Enzo said softly. I'm not really, Jamie looked down. I get scared a lot. Of the dark. Of loud noises. Mia says it's okay to be scared. Mia's right. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. Jamie considered this, then nodded. His hand moved unconsciously to his chest, the ending gesture of that signal. A habit, maybe, or a memory his conscious mind had buried but his body remembered. Okay, that's enough. Mia appeared beside them, her presence sharp with warning. She put a hand on Jamie's shoulder. Jamie, go help Lily with her puzzle. The boy obeyed without argument, sliding off his chair. Mia waited until he was across the room before turning to Enzo, her voice low and dangerous. I know what you're doing. What am I doing? Getting close to him. Asking questions. Testing boundaries. Her eyes were hard. I've seen it before, men who show up with money and interest. It never ends well for the kids. I'm not. I don't care what you are. Mia stepped closer, fearless. Jamie's been through hell. He doesn't remember most of it, thank God, but he still has nightmares. Still flinches at fire alarms. Whatever you want from him, the answer is no. Fire alarms. Enzo's chest tightened. I'm not here to hurt anyone, he said quietly. Then why are you here? Really? Mia's voice dropped to a whisper. Don't give me that donor bullshit. You followed me home, you asked about Jamie specifically, and now you're here talking to him like you know him. So tell me the truth or get out. The truth was impossible. The truth was 9 years of lies, and a betrayal so deep Enzo still couldn't see the bottom. The truth was this woman had saved his son's life without knowing it, and Enzo couldn't repay that debt without exposing them all to danger. I lost a son, Enzo said finally. It was the truest thing he could say. A long time ago. Jamie reminds me of him. Something in Mia's expression softened. Just slightly. I'm sorry for your loss. But Jamie isn't a replacement for whatever you're missing. I know. Then you understand why you need to leave. Enzo looked past her at Jamie, who was helping Lily with her puzzle, patient and gentle. His son.
Alive.
Right there. I want to help, Enzo said. Not just with money. With protection. These kids are vulnerable here. We're careful. Careful isn't enough, Enzo met her eyes. You're doing something good, Mia. But you're one person, and this city eats good people alive. Let me help. Why would you do that? Because one of those children is mine, Enzo thought. Because I've already lost 9 years, and I won't lose another day. Because no one helped me when I needed it, he said instead. Mia studied him for a long moment. Finally, she sighed. The electrical panel is about to blow. We need it replaced before winter or we'll freeze. I'll have someone here tomorrow. Someone discreet. No city officials, no inspections. Understood. Enzo picked up his briefcase, pulled out 10,000 in cash, and set it on the table. For food.
Heat.
Whatever they need. Mia stared at the money like it might bite her. That's too much. It's not enough. Enzo walked toward the door, then paused. That signal Jamie does. 3 fingers, circle, tap. Where'd he learn it? Mia's face shuddered. I don't know. He's done it since I found him. Why? Just curious. He left before she could ask more questions, stepping out into the afternoon sun. His hands shook as he walked to his car. Jamie didn't remember him. Didn't remember his real name or his real father. Someone had stolen those memories along with everything else. But that signal remained. Buried deep. Waiting. Enzo would bring everything back. And he'd destroy whoever had taken it away. The DNA results arrived at Enzo's mansion at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Marcus had them couriered in a sealed envelope marked confidential medical records, generic enough to avoid suspicion. Enzo was alone in his study, as he'd been most nights since discovering Jamie. He dismissed his guards, locked the door, and opened the envelope with hands that wouldn't stay steady. The lab report was clinical, sterile. Pages of genetic markers and probability calculations. But the conclusion at the bottom was simple. Probability of paternity, 999%. Marco Vitali and Jamie Cooper were the same person. Enzo set the papers down carefully, as if they might shatter. Then he stood, walked to the window overlooking his estate, and let out a sound he hadn't made in 9 years, a sob that came from somewhere deep and broken. His son was alive. His son had been alive this entire time, living in squalor, believing he was an orphan named Jamie Cooper, while Enzo had mourned an empty casket. The rage and grief collided in his chest like opposing storms. He wanted to scream, to destroy everything in reach, to find whoever had done this and make them suffer in ways that would make hell look merciful. Instead, he pressed his forehead against the cold window and cried. Silent, shaking tears for 9 years of stolen birthdays and missed moments. For a 6-year-old boy who'd watched his mother die and been taken from everything he knew. For Marco's nightmares and fear of fire alarms. I'm sorry, Enzo whispered to the darkness. I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Did you get it? Marcus asked quietly. Yeah, Enzo's voice was raw. Boss, I'm sorry. What do you need?
Time. Space.
I'll call you tomorrow. Enzo ended the call. He poured himself 3 fingers of scotch, drank it in one swallow, and poured another. The alcohol did nothing to dull the storm inside him. Someone had done this. Someone close enough to know his family's schedule, bold enough to fake a child's death, connected enough to forge documents and bribe officials. Someone who'd looked Enzo in the eye every day while his son was out there, lost and alone. The list of suspects was short, and Rocco Marchetti's name sat at the top. Enzo pulled out his phone to call Leo to order deeper surveillance on Rocco, but his office door opened before he could dial. Boss, sorry to interrupt. Rocco walked in, file folder in hand, and stopped when he saw Enzo's face. Jesus, you okay? You look like hell. Enzo quickly wiped his eyes, turning his grief into anger. I said I wasn't to be disturbed. The Castellano deal fell through. Thought you'd want to know. Rocco set the folder on the desk, his eyes sharp and assessing. What's going on? What's got you this rattled? Nothing. Family business. You don't have family anymore, Rocco said it without malice, just stating facts. Then his gaze dropped to the papers on Enzo's desk, the DNA results, partially visible. Enzo saw the exact moment Rocco's expression changed. Saw the flicker of recognition, the quick calculation behind his eyes. What's that? Rocco asked, too casually. I said leave. Enzo's hand moved closer to the gun in his desk drawer. Is that a paternity test? Rocco took a step closer. Boss, if you've got some kid out there we should know about.
Get
out. Enzo's voice dropped to the tone that made men run. Rocco raised his hands, backing toward the door. All right. Touchy subject. I get it, but his eyes were already planning, already calculating. He left, closing the door softly. Enzo immediately grabbed his phone, calling Leo. Rocco just left my office. Where is he? Heading down the hallway toward the east wing. Want me to stop him?
no.
Follow him. Every call he makes, every person he talks to, I want to know. Starting now. On it. Enzo stared at the closed door, his instincts screaming. He'd made a mistake showing vulnerability in front of Rocco. Worse, he'd left evidence visible. He gathered the DNA results, locked them in his safe, and waited. 20 minutes later, Leo called back. Boss, we got a problem. Rocco just made 3 calls from his car. Encrypted line, but we caught fragments. Who'd he call? First call was to someone in the Castellano family. Second was to the Russians. Third, boss, the third was to Tommy Chen's people. The rival families. All 3 of Enzo's biggest competitors, contacted within minutes. What did he say? We only got pieces. Something about Vitali's got a weakness and the boy is leverage boss. I think he knows about Marco. The world tilted. Enzo gripped the desk. He couldn't have seen enough. Doesn't matter what he saw. He suspects something, and that's enough. Leo's voice was urgent. If he's reaching out to rivals, he's making a move. He's either trying to take over or sell you out. Or both. Rocco was ambitious, had been since he was a soldier. Enzo had promoted him because he was ruthless and effective. Now those same qualities made him dangerous. Where is he now? Still driving. Heading toward the waterfront. Should I bring him in? Enzo wanted to say yes. Wanted to drag Rocco into a basement and make him confess everything. But if Rocco had already spread the information, killing him would only confirm its importance. Let him run. Keep following. I need to know everyone he contacts. Enzo's mind raced through scenarios. And get men to the orphanage.
Now.
Unmarked cars, concealed positions. If anyone goes near those kids, they won't get close. I promise. Enzo hung up and immediately called Marcus. We're out of time. Rocco knows something about Marco. He's already contacted the rival families.
Jesus.
What do you want to do? Move the boy. Tonight. Before anyone. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from Leo. Enzo answered. Boss, we got movement. 3 cars just turned onto Warehouse Row. Castellano's people. They're heading straight for the orphanage.
No. Not yet.
Not before he could. Stop them, Enzo barked. I don't care how. Stop them now. We're moving. But boss, we're outnumbered. We need backup. Enzo was already running for the door, grabbing his gun from the desk. I'm on my way. Keep those kids safe. He burst out of his study, shouting orders to his guards. The house erupted into controlled chaos, men grabbing weapons, cars starting in the driveway. But Enzo knew the truth that chilled his blood. The orphanage was 15 minutes away. 15 minutes was a lifetime in a firefight. And Marco, his son who didn't even know his real name, was caught in the middle. Enzo's men reached the orphanage first. By the time he arrived, Leo had 4 armed men positioned around the building's perimeter, concealed in the shadows with eyes on every approach. Any movement? Enzo demanded, climbing out of his car. Not yet. The Castellano cars circled the block twice, then backed off. They're watching from a distance. Leo pointed to a van parked 3 blocks down. They know we're here now.
Good.
Let them watch. Enzo stared up at the orphanage. Lights were on in the common room. Through the window, he could see Mia moving around, oblivious to the danger circling. How many men can you spare? I've got 6 more coming. Be here in 10 minutes. Put them on rotation. 24-hour surveillance. No one gets within a block of this building without us knowing. Boss, we can't maintain this forever. Eventually. I know. Enzo's jaw tightened. Just buy me time to move them somewhere safe. He didn't go inside. Didn't trust himself not to grab Marco and run. Instead, he sat in his car and waited, watching the orphanage like a guardian angel with blood on his hands. Dawn came cold and gray. The city woke slowly, delivery trucks, early commuters, the rhythm of ordinary life. Inside the orphanage, lights brightened as the children stirred. Enzo watched through binoculars as Mia made breakfast. The kids gathered around the table, sleepy and rumpled. Marco, Jamie, sat between Tommy and Lily, laughing at something one of them said. Normal. Safe. Completely unaware of the predators circling. Boss, we got a problem. Leo's voice crackled through Enzo's earpiece. 3 vehicles approaching from the east. Moving fast. Enzo's blood went cold. The Castellanos? Can't tell yet. Wait. 4 men per vehicle.
Armed.
This is a hit squad. Light them up before they reach the building. Boss, it's broad daylight. Civilians on the street. I don't care. Keep them away from those kids. But the cars moved too fast. They screeched to a stop in front of the orphanage, doors flying open. 12 men poured out, weapons drawn, pistols mostly, 1 shotgun Enzo could see. Engaging. Leo's voice was sharp with urgency. Gunfire erupted. Enzo's men opened fire from their positions, dropping 2 of the attackers immediately. But the others made it to the orphanage door, kicking it open. Inside, Enzo heard screaming. Children's screams. He was out of the car and running before conscious thought caught up. His gun was in his hand, safety off. Behind him, tires squealed as more of his men arrived. The orphanage's interior had transformed into chaos. The children were running, panicked. Mia stood in front of them like a lioness, a broken chair leg in her hands. "Get back," she screamed at the gunman. "They're just kids." A Castellano soldier grabbed her arm. She swung the chair leg, connecting with his jaw. He stumbled back, cursing. "Feisty bitch," another man raised his gun at her. Mia dove, pulling a fire alarm on the wall. The shrill sound filled the building, bells clanging, lights flashing. Then she was moving, herding children toward the back of the common room. Basement. Go, go, go. She practically threw the smaller ones toward a door hidden behind a filing cabinet. Tommy helped, pushing kids through. Jamie stood frozen, staring at the armed men with wide, terrified eyes. "Jamie, move." Mia grabbed his hand, yanking him toward the basement door. "Where's the boy?" one of the gunmen shouted. "Vitali's kid. Where is he?" They knew. They knew Marco was here. Enzo burst through the front door, his gun already firing. He dropped the nearest Castellano soldier, with 2 shots to the chest. Leo and his men poured in behind him, and suddenly the orphanage was a war zone. Mia shoved Jamie through the basement door, then turned back. Lily was still in the common room, cowering under the table, too scared to move. "Lily!" Mia ran back. A gunman appeared in her path, weapon raised. Mia didn't hesitate. She threw herself at him, clawing and biting like a wild thing. The gun went off, the bullet punching into the ceiling. Enzo shot the man before he could fire again. The soldier dropped, and Mia stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock. "Get the kids out," Enzo shouted at her. She stared at him, this man in an expensive suit, killing people in her home, and something broke in her expression.
Fear.
Betrayal. Understanding. "You did this," she whispered.
Get
"The kids out." Another gunman came through the side door. Vincent intercepted him, and they went down in a brutal hand-to-hand struggle. Furniture shattered. Windows broke. Mia grabbed Lily and ran for the basement. Enzo covered her, firing at anything that moved. His men were efficient, trained. The Castellano soldiers were street thugs, outmatched and outgunned. In 90 seconds, it was over. 6 attackers dead, 3 wounded and fleeing. Enzo's men pursued them into the street, finishing the job. The fire alarm still shrieked. Smoke from gunfire hazed the air. The orphanage looked like a bomb had hit it, furniture destroyed, walls pocked with bullet holes, blood on the floor. Enzo stood in the middle of the carnage, breathing hard, his gun still raised. From the basement he heard crying, children crying. Mia emerged first, her face pale with fury. Behind her, 7 terrified kids huddled together. Marco clung to Tommy's hand, tears streaming down his face. "You bastard," Mia's voice shook. "You brought them here. You did this." "I saved you," Enzo said quietly. "You endangered them. These kids, these innocent kids," her voice broke. "There are bodies. There's blood. They saw everything." She was right. Enzo had brought death to the only safe place these children knew. His presence had painted a target on their backs. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it.
Sorry?
Mia laughed, a sound on the edge of hysteria. "Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't erase what they just saw." Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the cops. "We need to leave," Leo urged.
Now.
Enzo looked at Marco, at his son, terrified and traumatized again. The boy didn't recognize him as anything but a stranger with a gun. "Come with me," Enzo said to Mia. "All of you. I have a place safe, secure. Are you insane? Mia pulled the children closer. You just turned our home into a battlefield, and you want us to trust you? Those men will come back. With more. You can't protect them alone. I was doing fine until you showed up. You were surviving on borrowed time. Enzo holstered his gun. I can keep them safe. But you have to trust me. Trust you. Mia's eyes blazed. I don't even know who you are. The sirens grew louder. Enzo's men were already disappearing, professional ghosts. My name is Enzo Vitali, he said. And one of these children belongs to me. The mansion sat on 5 acres behind iron gates and security cameras that tracked every sparrow. Enzo's men swept the property twice before allowing the cars through. By the time they arrived, it was mid-morning, and the children were silent with exhaustion and shock. Mia hadn't spoken to Enzo during the entire drive. She sat in the back of the SUV, arms around Jamie and Lily, staring out the window with hollow eyes. The other children followed in a second vehicle, guarded by Leo and Vincent. When they pulled up to the mansion's entrance, marble steps, fountain in the circular drive, architecture that screamed wealth and power, Mia finally spoke. This is where you live. Her voice was flat, emotionless. While those kids were sleeping in a condemned building. It's complicated, Enzo said.
No.
It's simple. You're rich and they're poor and you didn't care until yesterday. She climbed out before he could respond, helping the children from the vehicle. They stared at the mansion with wide eyes, overwhelmed by the opulence. Jamie held Mia's hand tightly, his other hand gripping his stuffed rabbit. Inside, Enzo's housekeeper, Maria, a grandmother who'd worked for him for 15 years, took over with practiced efficiency. She led the children to guest rooms, promised hot food and clean clothes, spoke to them in soothing tones that gradually eased their panic. Miss Mia, you come too, Maria said gently. You need rest. I'm not leaving them, Mia's grip on Jamie tightened. They'll be safe here. I promise, Maria's eyes were kind but firm. The little ones need baths and proper sleep. You can help, yes. Reluctantly, Mia allowed herself to be herded upstairs with the children. But she looked back at Enzo with an expression that promised this conversation wasn't over. Enzo waited in his study, pacing like a caged wolf. His hands still shook with adrenaline from the firefight. On his desk, photos from the orphanage, crime scene photos Leo had taken before the cops arrived. Evidence of the war Enzo had brought to innocent children. 2 hours later, Maria knocked softly. The children are fed and sleeping. Miss Mia is waiting for you in the library. Enzo found her standing by the window, arms crossed, fury radiating from every line of her body. She'd changed into clothes Maria provided, simple jeans and a sweater, but her hair was still wild, and her eyes held the look of someone pushed too far. Start talking, she demanded. You should sit. I'll stand. Talk. Enzo closed the library door, ensuring privacy. The men who attacked the orphanage were sent by a rival family. They were looking for a specific child. Which child? Jamie. Mia's face went white.
Why?
He's just a kid. He's nobody. He's not nobody, Enzo's voice was rough. He's my son. The words hung in the air like smoke. Mia stared at him, processing, rejecting, processing again. That's insane, she whispered. 9 years ago, my family died in a fire. My wife and my 6-year-old son, Marco. Or that's what I was told. Enzo pulled out his phone, showing her photos, Marco as a baby, as a toddler, at age 6. The resemblance to Jamie was undeniable. Someone faked his death, gave him a new identity, left him in that orphanage to rot. Mia's hands trembled. Jamie's been with me for 7 years. I found him at St. Mary's when I was 18, volunteering. He was this lost little boy who wouldn't talk, wouldn't eat. Her voice cracked. I practically raised him. And you saved his life doing it. You can't just show up and claim him. Anger flooded back, protective and fierce. You have photos and a story, but that doesn't make you his father. Not where it counts. I have DNA results. 999% match. He's mine. He's not property. Mia stepped closer, fearless despite Enzo's size and reputation. You can't own a child. You don't get to reclaim him like lost luggage. I'm not trying to. Then what are you doing? Because from where I'm standing, you've destroyed his home, terrified him and the other kids, and dragged us into your world of guns and violence. Some father. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Enzo absorbed it, knowing she was right, knowing he'd done exactly what she said. I want to protect him, he said quietly. That's all I want. By keeping him here? In your fortress? Surrounded by armed guards and enemies. Mia's laugh was bitter. This isn't protection. This is a different kind of prison. A knock at the door interrupted them. Maria's voice came softly. Mr. Vitali? The little boy is asking for Miss Mia. He's frightened. Mia moved immediately toward the door. Enzo followed. Jamie stood in the hallway, his rabbit clutched to his chest, tears on his cheeks. I woke up, and you weren't there. I thought they took you. Oh, baby, Mia dropped to her knees, pulling him into her arms. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Jamie buried his face in her shoulder, his small body shaking. Over his head, Mia glared at Enzo with an expression that said, see, this is what matters. Enzo stood frozen, watching his son cling to another person for comfort. Watching Marco, Jamie, find safety in someone else's arms. The boy didn't even glance at him. To Jamie, Enzo was just a dangerous stranger who'd brought nightmares into his life. The truth carved itself into Enzo's chest. He was blood, but he was nothing else. A father in genetics only. 9 years too late to be anything more. I'm scared, Jamie whispered into Mia's shoulder. I know, but you're safe now. Promise. I promise, Mia stood, lifting Jamie, too old to be carried but needing it anyway. She looked at Enzo, and her eyes were hard. We're leaving. Tomorrow. All of us. You can't keep us here. Those men will come back, Enzo said. Not just Castellano's people. Others. Once word spreads that I have an heir, every enemy I've made will target him. Then maybe you should have thought about that before telling anyone. Mia's voice rose. Before bringing your war to innocent kids. I didn't tell anyone. Someone betrayed me. Someone in my own organization. Enzo's hands clenched. And until I find out who, Jamie Marco, isn't safe anywhere. His name is Jamie. Mia's voice was steel. And he's not yours to claim. You abandoned him. I thought he was dead. Well, he wasn't. He was scared and alone and traumatized, and I was the one who helped him. I was the one who held him through nightmares. I was the one who taught him he could be safe again. Tears ran down her face now. You don't get to show up with money and guards and take him away from the only person who's loved him for 7 years. Jamie stirred in her arms.
Mia?
Why are you crying? She wiped her eyes quickly. I'm okay, baby. The boy finally looked at Enzo, really looked at him. Are you bad? The question was simple. The answer was complicated. No, Enzo said softly. I'm trying to keep you safe. From what? From the world I built. From the enemies I made. From the consequences of my choices. From people who want to hurt you, Enzo said instead. Jamie considered this. Mia keeps me safe. I know she does. Then why are you here? Because you're my son. Because I love you even though you don't remember me. Because I've spent 9 years mourning you, and now that you're alive, I won't let anyone take you again. Because Mia needs help, Enzo said. And I'm going to make sure both of you stay safe. You promise? The word lodged in Enzo's throat. He'd made promises before, to Elena, to Marco, promises he'd failed to keep. I promise, he said anyway. Jamie nodded slowly, then turned back to Mia. Can we go back to bed now? Yeah, baby. Let's go. She carried him back upstairs without another word to Enzo, leaving him alone in the hallway with the weight of everything he'd lost and everything he still might lose. Blood wasn't enough. DNA wasn't enough. Marco, Jamie, belonged to Mia in every way that mattered. And Enzo had run out of time to change that. The attack came at 3 a.m. Enzo was in his study, exhausted but unable to sleep, when the security alarm screamed to life. Not the perimeter alarm, the internal one. Someone had breached the mansion itself. He grabbed his gun, moving toward the hallway. Leo's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Boss, we got hostiles inside. East Wing. They came through the..." Gunfire cut him off. Enzo ran toward the guest wing, where the children slept. His mind calculated rapidly. 12 guards on duty, mansion layout memorized, but if someone had breached internal security, they had inside help. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with Vincent, bleeding from a shoulder wound. "It's Rocco," Vincent gasped. He brought 10 men. They're heading for the kid. Everything clicked into place. The leaked information. The Castellano attack. The perfect timing. Rocco hadn't just overheard about Marco. He'd been planning this move for 9 years. "Where is he?"
Underground garage.
He grabbed the boy and the girl, took them down through the service entrance. Ice flooded Enzo's veins. "Get back up.
Now."
He didn't wait for Vincent's response. The underground garage was 3 levels down, accessible only through the mansion's old service elevator, a remnant from when the estate had full staff. If Rocco had Jamie and Mia down there, he had them trapped. Or he was using them as bait. Enzo took the stairs, moving fast and quiet. 2 of Rocco's men guarded the stairwell entrance. Enzo shot them both before they could raise their weapons, not breaking stride. The garage was a cavern of concrete and shadows, lit by fluorescent strips that buzzed overhead. 30 cars sat in neat rows, Enzo's collection, everything from vintage Ferraris to armored SUVs. At the far end, Rocco stood beside a black van, gun pressed to Mia's head. Jamie was in the van. Enzo could see him through the window, conscious, terrified, hands tied. 3 more of Rocco's men flanked him, weapons trained on the stairwell entrance where Enzo emerged. "There he is." Rocco smiled, the expression wolfish. "The great Enzo Vitali, come to save his lost boy." "Let them go." Enzo's gun was steady, aimed at Rocco's center mass. "This is between us." "It's been between us for 9 years, boss. You just didn't know it." Rocco's grip tightened on Mia, who stood rigid with fear. "Drop the gun, or I paint the walls with her brain." Enzo calculated angles, odds, possibilities. 3 armed men, Rocco with a hostage, 30 feet of open space. Even if he was fast, Mia would die. He lowered his gun slowly, setting it on the ground. "Kick it away." Enzo obeyed. "Good. Now walk forward. Hands where I can see them." Enzo moved into the open, exposed and weaponless. Rocco's men shifted to cover him from multiple angles. Professional positioning. They'd planned this carefully. "You know," Rocco said conversationally, "I almost had everything 9 years ago. Your wife dead, your son dead, you falling apart. The family was mine for the taking. But you were too stubborn, too strong. You rebuilt when you should have crumbled. You killed Elena." The words came out flat, emotionless. Inside, Enzo was calculating how many steps to Rocco, how fast he could move. "I killed a liability. She made you soft, made you think about legacy instead of power." Rocco shrugged. "The boy was supposed to die in the fire too. But Dominic got soft at the last minute. I couldn't stomach killing a kid directly. So he had his sister take Marco, dump him at an orphanage, let the system erase him. Why keep him alive at all? Insurance. Leverage if I ever needed it." Rocco's smile widened. "And look, turns out I did." The mighty Enzo Vitali, brought to his knees by a brat who doesn't even remember him. In the van, Jamie was crying silently. Enzo could see his small face pressed against the window, watching. "You framed the Castellanos for the fire," Enzo said, keeping Rocco talking while his eyes tracked every detail, security camera positions, car placements, his men's locations.
"Easy."
A few planted clues, a convenient witness who escaped, You went to war with them, weakened both families, and I consolidated power while you were distracted. Rocco laughed. It was beautiful. Would have been perfect if you'd actually died in one of those firefights. But I didn't.
No. You survived.
Got stronger. Became untouchable. Rocco's expression darkened. Until yesterday when you got sloppy. Left DNA evidence lying around. Started getting emotional. I knew if the boy was alive, you'd be vulnerable again. So you leaked his existence to the rivals. To everyone. Castellano, the Russians, the Chinese, even some ambitious captains in our own family. Rocco's eyes glittered. By tomorrow, every family in the Northeast will know Enzo Vitali has a secret heir. A weakness. A target. Mia whimpered as Rocco pressed the gun harder against her temple. And when you're dead, killed trying to protect your precious son, I'll step in. Take over the family. Tell everyone the boy died with you. Clean ending. You won't make it out of this garage, Enzo said quietly.
No.
Rocco gestured to his men. I've got guns. I've got hostages. I've got... Enzo moved. 20 years of violence had taught him exactly how fast he could cross 30 feet. How to read a man's trigger finger, the tension in shoulders before someone fired. Rocco was talking, confident, distracted by his own monologue. Amateur mistake. Enzo was on him before Rocco could process the movement. He grabbed the gun, twisting it away from Mia's head. Rocco fired. The bullet went into the ceiling. Then Enzo's fist connected with Rocco's throat, crushing his windpipe. Gunfire erupted. Enzo felt a bullet graze his arm as he drove Rocco into the van, using the man's body as a shield. Rocco's men were shooting, but they hesitated, afraid to hit their boss. That hesitation cost them. Leo and his men poured in from the service entrance, flanking Rocco's soldiers. The garage became a killing ground. Enzo didn't watch. He focused on Rocco, who was choking, dying slowly from the crushed windpipe. You took 9 years, Enzo whispered in his ear. 9 years of my son's life. I should make you suffer for decades. Rocco's eyes bulged, pleading. But I don't have time for that. Enzo pulled a knife from his belt, the same knife he'd carried since he was a soldier. This is for Elena. For Marco. For every day you let me believe they were gone. He drove the blade up under Rocco's ribs, straight into his heart.
Quick. Clean.
Merciful in a way Rocco didn't deserve. Rocco died with hatred in his eyes. The gunfire stopped. Rocco's men were down, dead or surrendering. Leo approached carefully. Boss, you're hit. Enzo looked down. Blood soaked his sleeve, but the wound was shallow.
I've fine.
Get the boy. Leo pulled open the van door. Jamie was hyperventilating, his small body shaking violently. Mia climbed in beside him, gathering him close despite her own shock. Enzo stood over Rocco's body, breathing hard. 9 years of mystery solved. The betrayer found and killed. But Rocco's last words echoed. By tomorrow, every family in the Northeast will know. The secret was out. Marco, Jamie, was a known target now. And there was nowhere in Enzo's world safe enough to hide him. Dawn broke cold and gray over the harbor. Enzo stood at the end of a private pier, watching his men prepare the deception that would save his son's life. A black sedan sat on the concrete dock, identical to the one Enzo drove. Inside, a body, male, Marco's approximate size and build, courtesy of the morgue and a coroner on Enzo's payroll. Soon, the car would burn. The harbor patrol would find it in the morning. And the world would believe that Enzo Vitali's secret heir had died in a tragic attempt to flee the city. Death by fire. Again. The symmetry wasn't lost on Enzo. Behind him, footsteps approached. Mia walked down the pier, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. The children were safe in a hotel 2 miles away, guarded by Leo and Vincent. But Mia had demanded to be here, to understand what came next. You're really doing this, she said, not a question. It's the only way. Enzo didn't turn from the water. Rocco leaked Marco's existence to every rival family on the East Coast. By now, they all know I have a son. An heir. They'll never stop coming for him.
So you fake his death.
Make them think he died with you in some attack. Not with me. Enzo's voice was rough. I'm leaving too. Transferring control of the Vitali family to my oldest friend, Anthony Greco. He's been my underboss for 20 years. Loyal, smart, no ambition to be boss. He'll keep the peace. Mia studied his profile. You're giving up your empire. I'm choosing my son. The words came easier than Enzo expected. 9 years ago, someone made me choose between family and power by taking away my choice. Now I'm making it freely. What about the other families? Won't they still hunt you? Enzo Vitali will die tonight too. Car accident, funeral next week. There'll be enough evidence to satisfy everyone he finally looked at her. We'll disappear. New names, new lives, somewhere they'll never think to look.
We.
Mia's eyes narrowed. I never agreed to. You and the children are targets now too. You were seen with Marco. They know you're connected. Enzo's voice softened. I'm not asking you to stay with me. I'm offering you a way out. A safe life for all of you. Funded by blood money. Funded by someone who owes you everything. Enzo stepped closer. You kept my son alive when I couldn't. You gave him love, safety, a childhood. I can never repay that debt. But I can give you this, a chance to disappear with him. To keep being the family he needs. Mia's eyes glistened. You're his father, biologically. But you're right. That's not what makes someone a parent. The admission hurt, but it was true. Marco doesn't know me.
Doesn't trust me.
When he's scared, he runs to you. That won't change in a day or a week or a year. Then what are you asking for?
Time.
A chance to know him. To be part of his life. Even if I'm not the center of it. Enzo's voice cracked. I missed 9 years. I won't miss more. But I won't force him into anything. He stays with you. You make the decisions. I'm just
there.
If you'll let me be. Mia was silent for a long moment, watching the sunrise paint the water gold. He has nightmares about fire. Wakes up screaming sometimes. I hold him until he calms down. Elena died in the fire. He must have seen. Enzo couldn't finish. He doesn't remember details. Just flames and fear. The doctors said trauma erased most of his memory from before the orphanage. Mia wiped her eyes. Maybe that's a blessing. He doesn't remember losing you, but he lost me anyway.
Yeah.
He did. She turned to face him fully. If we do this, if we disappear together, I need your word. No mafia business. No violence. No bringing that world into his life ever again. You have it. And he doesn't learn the truth until he's ready. Until I say he's ready. That one hurt. The thought of his son not knowing who he really was, not knowing Enzo was his father. But what good would the truth do right now? The boy was traumatized, scared, clinging to the only stability he had. Agreed, Enzo said. And the other kids come with us. All of them. I won't abandon Tommy, Lily, Sarah, any of them. I've already arranged it. New identities for everyone, a house large enough for 8 kids and 2 adults. School registrations, medical records, everything needed to start over. Mia stared at him. You've been planning this since last night. Since the moment I realized the truth was out. Enzo looked back at the sedan waiting to burn. I've built an empire on violence and fear. I've done things that would horrify you. But I won't let my son pay for my sins. Not anymore. Where would we go? Montana. Small town, mostly ranchers and farmers. I bought a property there years ago under a shell company, a contingency plan I never thought I'd use. It's remote, quiet, safe. The kind of place where people mind their own business. You'd go from being a mafia boss to what? A rancher? I'd go from being alone to having a son. Enzo's voice was quiet. Everything else is just details. The eastern sky brightened, and Enzo's men moved to their positions. One doused the sedan in gasoline. Another checked the body positioning. Professionals making death look accidental. Light it, Enzo ordered. A match flared. The car erupted in flames, black smoke billowing into the dawn. Enzo watched his son die for the second time, this time by his own hand, this time to save him. "It's done," he said quietly. Mia slipped her hand into his, the first voluntary touch between them. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. "Don't make me regret this," she whispered. "I won't. I promise." Together, they watched the car burn, the flames reflecting in the dark water. Behind them, the city woke to news that would spread by noon. Enzo Vitali's secret son, dead in a tragic fire. The great Don retiring in grief, transferring power, stepping back from the empire he'd built. None of it true, all of it necessary. "We leave tonight," Enzo said. "New names by tomorrow. What will you call yourself?" He thought of Marco's gap-toothed smile, Elena's laugh, 9 years of grief transforming into something else. Something like hope. "I don't care. As long as my son calls me something eventually." The flames consumed the sedan, and with it, the last pieces of Enzo Vitali's old life. What rose from the ashes would be something new, something worth saving. The Montana sky stretched endless and blue, unmarred by the gray haze of city pollution. Enzo, now called David Carter, stood in the yard of their ranch house, hammer in hand, fixing the fence that separated their property from open grassland. 6 weeks had passed since they'd left the city. 6 weeks of silence broken only by wind, distant cattle, and children's laughter. 6 weeks of learning that peace was louder than he'd expected. The house sat on 40 acres, surrounded by mountains that turned purple at sunset. It was old but sturdy, 3 bedrooms upstairs for the kids, 2 downstairs for the adults. A kitchen large enough for 8 hungry children. A living room with a fireplace that burned wood instead of memories. Mia, now Sarah Carter, his supposed wife on paper, had transformed the space. Curtains in the windows, photos on the walls, a vegetable garden sprouting in the back. She moved through the house like she was erasing the orphanage from existence, replacing survival with actual living. The children adapted faster than Enzo expected. Tommy was enrolled in the local high school, already making friends. Lily had discovered horses at a neighbor's ranch and talked about them constantly. The younger ones attended elementary school in town, returning each day with stories about teachers and recess and normalcy. And Jamie Marco, still called himself Jamie, still called Mia, still looked at Enzo with cautious uncertainty, like he was a puzzle the boy couldn't quite solve. "David," Mia called from the porch. She'd taken to the fake name easily, correcting Enzo whenever he slipped. "Lunch in 10 minutes. Coming." His voice felt strange saying casual things. Lunch.
Coming.
Normal words for normal people. He set down the hammer, wiping sweat from his forehead. His hands were developing calluses in new places. The expensive suits hung unused in a closet. His gun was locked in a safe he hadn't opened in 4 weeks. Enzo Vitali was dead. David Carter was learning to live. Inside, the kitchen smelled like fresh bread and vegetable soup. The children crowded around the table, loud and chaotic in the way only kids could be. Mia ladled soup into bowls, her movements efficient but relaxed. She smiled more now. The shadows under her eyes had faded. Jamie sat at the corner, drawing in a new sketchbook Mia had bought in town. He still drew houses, always houses with red doors and yards and dogs. Dreams of permanence. "How's the fence?" Mia asked as Enzo washed his hands at the sink. "Fixed. Should hold through winter." "You're getting good at this." There was warmth in her voice now, the defensive edge worn away by weeks of watching him try. Try to be normal. Try to be safe. Try to be someone these kids could trust. "I'm learning." He dried his hands on a towel embroidered with roosters. Everything here was so deliberately domestic it sometimes made him ache. After lunch, the older kids did homework at the table while the younger ones played outside. Jamie asked if he could help with the fence, and Enzo's heart nearly stopped. "You sure?" he asked carefully. "It's pretty boring work." "I want to learn." Jamie grabbed his jacket. Mia says everyone should know how to fix things. They worked side by side in companionable silence. Enzo showed him how to hammer nails straight, how to test wood for rot, how to measure twice and cut once. Jamie listened intently, his small face serious with concentration. "You're good at this," Jamie said after a while. "Building stuff. I used to build different things," Enzo caught himself. "In my old job." "What kind of job?" "Running a criminal empire. Ordering executions. Breaking laws and breaking people." "Management," Enzo said instead. "Stressful. I like this better." "Me too," Jamie smiled slightly. "I like it here. It's quiet." "Is that good or bad?" "Good." The orphanage was quiet, but it was scared quiet. "This is safe quiet." The boy's wisdom surprised Enzo constantly. "And Mia's happy. She sings now when she cooks." "I noticed that. Are you happy?" Jamie looked up at him with Elena's eyes, dark, perceptive, seeing more than anyone expected. The question lodged in Enzo's throat. Was he happy? He'd given up power, wealth, respect. He lived in the middle of nowhere fixing fences and pretending to be someone named David. His son didn't know who he really was. But Marco was alive, breathing, safe, growing, laughing. "Yeah," Enzo said softly. "I'm happy." Jamie nodded, satisfied, and returned to hammering. They worked until the sun started setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and amber. Mia called them in for dinner, her voice carrying across the yard. Enzo gathered the tools while Jamie ran ahead toward the house. Then the boy stopped, turned back, and raised his hand. 3 fingers up. Circle motion. Tap against his chest. "I love you. Always and forever. Right here." The signal. The one Enzo had invented 9 years ago for a son who'd forgotten him. The one that had led him back to Marco against impossible odds. The one buried so deep in muscle memory that not even trauma could erase it completely. Time froze. Enzo stood with a hammer in his hand, staring at his son, unable to breathe. Jamie smiled, uncertain, testing, hoping, and repeated the gesture. Enzo's face cracked into a smile. Not the cold smirk of the dawn. Not the professional mask he'd worn for 20 years. A real smile, genuine and unguarded, reaching all the way to his eyes. He raised his hand and returned the signal. 3 fingers. Circle.
Top.
Jamie's smile widened into a grin, pure joy unfiltered, and he ran toward the house, leaving Enzo alone in the yard with tools and sunset and a heart that felt too full for his chest. Inside, through the lit windows, he could see his family. Mia setting the table. Children passing plates. Lily laughing at something Tommy said. A life he hadn't earned, but had been given anyway. The empire had burned. Enzo Vitali had died in flames by the harbor. But here, in this moment, David Carter was reborn. And for the first time in 9 years, Enzo Vitali, the ghost, the father, the man, felt something close to peace. He picked up his tools and walked toward the light. Toward home,